Hello, Jessica Sanchez here with another Second Life tutorial. And in this tutorial, we're going to look at the Object tab in the Edit window. So I've resed a prim, and the Object tab is actually the second tab. First tab is General, second tab is the Object tab. And here you'll see a lot of options, and in the Object Editor it contains the parameters for prim size and shape. And it also contains advanced parameters, which is to the right, to allow you to be able to manipulate your primitive shape to achieve a greater variety of shapes. You will also use this tab when trying to align two objects together, as well as, again, manipulating your objects like hollowing them out or twisting them. So let's take a look at this window here and all the options that are provided. And it's a lot, but we're going to go over all of them so that it makes sense to you. We're going to start off on the top left-hand side, and these options are not often used by our students, but just so that you know, once you finish modifying your shape and you like the way it looks and you like the position, you want to go ahead and lock it. What that does, it won't allow anyone to move it or edit it, neither yourself. Physical. If I give my object physical attributes, what's going to happen is it's going to react to collisions. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And so if I hit it by moving it, I can actually move my object, and it goes to the direction that I'm hitting it at. But again, for your projects, you probably won't be using this option. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck it. Temporary means if your object will, if you res it and then you stop editing it, after a while, it's just going to disappear. And this is if you're just messing around with the prim and trying to practice it, and you want to make sure that you delete it after you're done. You want to make sure to select temporary. But if this is a permanent item, don't check it, because you want to make sure it stays in your exhibit area. Phantom, pretty much what it says. It has a phantom effect, like I can walk through it as if it's a ghost. So it's the opposite of physical, because you can't collide on the object. All right, let's get back to edit. And so those are the check boxes on top. Now, the position shows you the position of the location of your prim in coordinates x, y, and z, what you see here, x, y, and z. So x is east and west, north and south, and altitude. So this is relative to the map the region that you're in. Using the number entries here rather than moving the object's axis allows you more accurate positioning, and it's especially important when you're trying to align two objects. The maximum values for the x and y are 256, because that says our map goes from 0 to 256. And the z actually goes even higher, and you can actually go up to 4,096 meters up in the air. You don't want to do that because our exhibits are not that high. So you can use the move button on the top to move your object, or you can use the position coordinates and change the coordinate values here in the Object tab. And it's just simply I can change it to 25, for example, by entering the number, or using the little arrows that are provided here so that you can slowly shift your item. Size. Your size displays the current dimensions of your object, providing the XYZ values again. Again, this is a three-dimensional world, so your object has XYZ dimensions. The maximum size you can have with an object is 64 meters. So you can actually change it up to 64. And so to see how big that is, you're probably not going to do it that much. You're not going to stretch it that much. Maybe say I wanted to create a wall. That's 4 meters high and 5 meters wide. And so there it is. So now I have a wall. So you can either stretch your object, or if you want more accurate size, you can actually just type in the number here in meters. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to rotation. So rotation, pretty much what it says, you can rotate your object. clockwise around the stated axis, either the x, y, and z coordinate. It is limited from, the limit values are 0 to 360. So for example, if I change this to 360, let's try this to 180, and there you go, it flips it, it's rotating it. Now let's take a look at the left-hand side. The first option on top here, this drop-down in the Object tab, allows you to change the primitive shape that you're working on. So instead of working with a box, you may decide, you know what, I should have used a cylinder. All of a sudden, now you have a cylinder to work with. Path cut. The path cut begin and end, which is B and E, cuts a wedge-shaped section out of your prim, like cutting a piece of cake. The value should be from 0 to 1, with B smaller than E. So here, if I move my up arrow, I can make a wedge shape here. Hollow. Hollow is just what it means, and it's right here. It allows you to hollow your prim. You determine how much by changing the values from 0 to 95. You can choose a hollow shape after which from the drop-down list provided. So here, I'm going to change it. I can either enter the value or use the arrows. So to completely hollow it out, I'm going to type 95. So there you go, it's completely hollowed out. Now, by default, the shape of the hollow is set by the shape of the item. But I can choose to change that. Say I want to change it to a square. Notice what happens. The hollow shape within the object becomes a square. And it's kind of neat. So if I decide to stretch my object, maybe I want to make a building that's kind of interesting, where it looks circular on the outside, but on the inside is a square. I can do that. So I can maybe change this to a 10, the size to a 10 by 10. And so if I close this, now you'll notice on the inside it has straight walls, a square-shaped inside. And on the outside, it's shaped as a cylinder. So let's continue modifying our shape. So you can see that you can manipulate your primitive shape to be something completely different from what you started with. If I twist it, take a look at what happens. I can use my camera controls to see the effect. It twists my object. Now, to change the values, if you select B, twisting begins at the bottom. If you select E, twisting begins at the top. So I selected B. So if I can put it back to 0. Or if I want to add more twisting, I can do so by changing the values of the B and E. Taper. Taper is really handy, especially if you want to create a frame. So I'm gonna choose a Resi cube. I can taper a prim to diminish or reduce the thickness towards one end. The range is from X, field is -1 to 1. When positive, it shrinks the width of the object in the X direction at the top. And if you change when X equals 1, the top will actually become, so I'm going to show you what happens. If X equals 1, which I move it up, my object becomes a triangle, right? When we're creating our frames, we actually do a taper as well. So we can actually have somewhat of a border. So if I change the values, notice that it's tapering, but I'm going to change the values from both sides. Now I'm going to stretch it. Of course, this is too big. Maybe I can type 2 by 3 for my prim. Maybe for our PowerPoints, rotate it so that it's facing you, and I can move it. And now I can apply a texture to this frame, and I can have a wooden frame or change the frame to be metallic. It's up to you. And then apply your PowerPoint texture on the frame itself. So I want you to try it, play around with these options so that you can better get acquainted with these options. Also, I've provided you this sheet, and this is in the sandbox. This allows you to see the basic prim modification guide. These are our default prims here, as you would see when you would create the default prims, except for the trees and the grass. And it'll allow you to see how the object will be modified if you do a path cut or if you change any of these options on the right hand side. So you can see, like, if you do a hollow, what happens to it. If you do a path cut, what happens to it. So if later on you decide, you know what, I would like to create a shape like this, just follow the instructions that it provides you and you can achieve your shapes. And this concludes this tutorial.